Say what's up in the live as you come in. We finally live. I was supposed to be live twice yesterday, chat, and I didn't do it. That's my bad. I didn't do it. It's my fault. I went live once for President Trump's cryptocurrency event, and he signed the EO, an executive order to start a Bitcoin reserve. So I went live for that. And then I was like, I'll be back in a couple of hours. And I didn't even do it. I'm fired for that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm fired for that one. So that's my fault, chat. But still Saturday live. Still Saturday live. Daily live, right? Every single day, Monday to Saturday. No Sunday streams. You guys know the drill. So yeah, that was my fault, guys, that I didn't jump back on here yesterday. Yeah, just had things to do, and then I was just like tired. Like I had the live scheduled, and I told my wife, I'm like, man, I'm kind of tired, and I meant to get to it, but I didn't. So I crashed. It's all good though. You know, I work throughout the week as well, so we gotta do what we gotta do. But as promised, daily live, Saturday live. So we're here. And as you guys, some of you guys might notice, I've been coming on a little bit later. That's because just based on my YouTube analytics, I can kind of see when the people that watch me are on, and they're usually on a little bit later than what I was coming on. So I started to kind of dial back a bit. So for those of you that wonder, because at first I was live pretty much every day at around 14:30 to like around 16:30. So anywhere from 2:30 to 4:30, I would go live. And then about a week ago, I started to kind of dial back, and it was really random. And that was on purpose. So now you guys know when I go live, it'll still be daily, Monday through Saturday, but it'll be later on in the day. So it'll probably be now somewhere around between 1600 and 1730, right? So 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. I'll be live around those times, and we're gonna just stick with that time because it just works best, at least for now. You know, things change, seasons change, but for now, that's what's working for me. So that's what we're rocking with, y'all. So let's talk about what's on the menu. Yesterday, I did do a daily live, so I did go live on Friday, but I didn't do my normal live where I sit here with you guys and we kind of go through stories and I kind of give commentary, and then at the end I have a Christian clip. We didn't do it like that. I wanted to cover some special coverage where President Trump did an executive order to start a Bitcoin reserve in the U.S. And then there was also a little bit of coverage of him receiving a replica of the FIFA trophy because he's supposed to give it away to the winner next year. And then it was, he had like a cryptocurrency kind of event. So those are the things that I covered yesterday. And then I was supposed to come back on. That's what I was saying when I first started the live. I was supposed to come back on and then do my normal live, but I just crashed because I was tired. So that's my fault, guys. But either way, we're back for the Saturday live. I won't be on tomorrow because you guys know I stream every single day except Sunday. And then we'll be back at it Monday like we never stop, right? So what's on the menu for today? We got a couple of great things I'm excited about today because I got Stephen A. Smith twice on the menu. Once he's on The View, and he's actually explaining to them why President Trump, his win for president was actually a mandate, and I think he makes a great point about it. Then we got another Stephen A. Smith interview, and he actually did it with Candace Owens. So for those of you who are familiar with Candace Owens, I've talked about her on the channel before. She knows her stuff. Very intelligent woman. She does her research. I think she's probably one of the greatest journalists out there. And definitely content creator as far as the politics and news. And she's very transparent. So I can appreciate that about Candace. What's up, guys? Say what's up in the chat. Do me a favor, hit that like button, guys. It only takes a second. Say what's up in the chat. Say where you watching from. Serenity, what's up? How you doing? So yeah, I love Candace Owens. I always say that she's a great person to go to for information, political information, historical information, and she really does her due diligence, right? And I don't give that those compliments lightly. Like, I can be pretty skeptical of people, but Candace Owens, I've been watching her for years, and I wasn't always the biggest fan. So I think it's always great when someone who wasn't your fan at first and then kind of becomes a supporter when they vouch for you. I always think it's super credible, just because she's won them over, right? So she has done that over the years. I know that she's been very transparent about her walk with politics. She used to be, like, for lack of better terms, I don't want to say something she wasn't, but I believe she said that she used to pretty much be a Democrat, or like basically on the liberal side of things. And then as she learned politics and she grew in her knowledge of politics, she pretty much went over to the conservative side. And because that was pretty much my journey as well, it resonates with me. So I think this is a great interview. I always say that I have a lot of friends from all walks of life: gay, straight, black, white, Asian, Caribbean, from all over the world. My time in the military did that, and also being from New York City, it's a melting pot. So I've always had an amalgamation of friends when it comes to race and culture. So I think that this was a great piece for me to pick out for the Black community. Anyone's welcome to watch, of course. That's not what this is particularly for. But I always come on here sometimes and say, for people who look like me, politics is not always very important to them. And that bothers me. I want politics to be important to them because I think they need to be, right? So a little bit of a tangent there, but I think this is good for people, Black and brown people, Black and brown communities, to hear what I'm about to play Candace Owens and Stephen A. Smith talk about. And then I'll get a little bit more into that. Republicans actually hammered Democratic mayors over immigration. So I got a chance to watch this live, where there were 4 Democratic, or you could say liberal, mayors that went before Congress, and it was tough. They were asking them basically about their choice to not cooperate with ICE and help when it comes to, cracking down on immigration. So I believe, I don't want to misquote, but I believe the mayors were from Chicago, Denver, Boston, and New York. Mayor Adams was there. So all of those 4 mayors kind of went in front of, the Republicans. And it was tough. It was tough. They wanted them to really answer questions straightforward. And if you guys watch Senate hearings, sometimes on the left side, they have a problem with that, like kind of just answering a question yes or no. Sometimes that is a challenge for Democrats, believe it or not. So yeah, we're gonna take a look at some of that. That's about a 14-minute clip. I might go through the whole thing. I probably won't. I might stop at around 10 minutes, and then that's from shout out to Clear Cut. I believe it's Clear Cut. It's called CLR Cut. The channel has 2003 subscribers, but shout out to the channel because I watch a lot of things by them. I think they do great work. And then one of the channel's favorites, Matt Moore's TV, he actually talks about the top secret meeting that the Democrats had shortly after, I guess you could say, President Trump's joint speech. How basically the Democratic Party imploded, and they had to have a secret meeting to kind of talk about what was the next steps and where were they going, because of how bad they embarrassed themselves in front of the nation. And then last but not least, we'll end the live with a Christian clip from our trusted friend Cliff Buell, and we'll be talking about someone who basically lived off of logic before they actually got to learn who Jesus Christ was, and how their logic worked until it didn't. So with that being said, welcome to Cozy Corner TV, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q, and we are on the corner. We're on the corner. Guys, do me a favor, as you come in the chat, hit that like button, say what's up, say where you're watching from. I appreciate it, and it takes the video a long way. It helps the channel grow and other people see what we're doing here, covering political news, in real life news, reacting to things of the culture, for people who don't really pay attention to it, right? Maybe you don't have time for it because you're a single mom and you run around a lot and the news is depressing. That's why I believe platforms like mine exist, because you get to still catch the story, but you also get to hear some common sense commentary about it. I usually come at my commentary from a very conservative and Christian view. But with that being said, most of my life I was also very liberal. So I don't say that I am conservative with a twist of liberal because I don't like that terminology. I just say I'm conservative with compassion, right? So that's usually how I approach things and I react to them, and sometimes you might see me get a little bit emotional, or let's just say passionate, and that's just who I am, guys. So when we react to things, depending on what's said, who's attacked, what's attacked, I tend to lower my commentary because that's what the channel's about, right? So we're gonna jump in. First things first, The View. We know The View is an extremely controversial show. I'm not sure how they are still on. That is no shout out to Whoopi, because throughout my childhood, Whoopi Goldberg has always made great videos and movies that I love still to this day. But with that being said, The View is a little toxic. I think we can all agree to that. On here, they have Stephen A. Smith, and I asked a question to Stephen and about why President Trump's win was a mandate. Like, why is this, so important, such a big deal that he took this win? And she starts to read off these statistics that ultimately amount to absolutely nothing. And Stephen A. Smith tells her why. I think he made a great point. So let's jump in. Give me one moment, guys. Let me check my audio. Guys, say what's up in the chat as you come in. Hit that like button for me. Okay, you in there? Let's see. All right, guys, let's jump right in.
Oh, Trump's only been in office for 6 weeks. Seems like 6 years, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And he's been going around with his cronies touting his so-called landslide and blowout win. But he won the popular vote by 1.5%, one of the smallest ever. And he won the general election by less than 50%. So what kind of mandate is this really?
Well, it is a mandate, and I'm going to explain why. And I don't mind the question, but let me be very clear. I'm no supporter of Trump. I'm a supporter of truth and the facts. And here's the facts. The man won every swing state. He increased in terms of his voter turnout in his favor from the standpoint of blacks, Latinos, and young voters. He increased his numbers in that regard from 2020. 89% of the counties shifted to the right. That's a mandate.
89.
We can sit up there and play around all we want to. In 2020, Trump didn't win the popular vote. He didn't win the electoral college vote. A matter of fact, the Republicans had won the popular vote, if I remember correctly, since 2004. But they did this year. So 20 years after they last won the popular vote, they won the popular vote. They won the electoral college vote. The man won every swing state. And on top of it, 89% of the counties shifted against. I don't understand how people can look at that and say, there's no mandate. There's a mandate.
What's the difference?
You know what I think is funny? I'm going to run that back a little bit because I love the fact that he went back to the years prior, and he says that, previously Trump didn't win the popular vote. Previously Trump didn't win, the electoral vote. So when you look at it, he's like, there's definitely a mandate because all of this stuff changed, and it didn't just change a little bit. It changed drastically. So I think it's hilarious, like the way he just kind of like laid it out there. And might I add, this is probably the quietest, this clip, that I've seen Sonny Hostin be.
Popular vote. He didn't win the electoral college vote. A matter of fact, the Republicans had won the popular vote, if I remember correctly, since 2004. But they did this year. So 20 years after they last won the popular vote, they won the popular vote. They won the electoral college vote. The man won every swing state. And on top of it, 89% of the counties shifted against. I don't understand how people can look at that and say, there's no mandate. There's a mandate.
What's a different definition of a mandate, I guess?
But the problem is that if you're the Democratic Party and you lost 49.8% to 48.3%, and you're looking at that 1.5% dip, that's an excuse for you to say, What we did really wasn't that
some people
bad.
didn't
We
show
should
up.
continue to do that.
Do you think
No,
that those-
don't continue to do
do
it.
you
Find a
think
new
that-
strategy.
But do you think those groups, the black voters, the Latino voters, and the others that you mentioned, are they going to regret it soon?
Possibly. I think so. I don't like what I'm seeing from Trump. I didn't like what I saw with Zelensky. I didn't like what I saw with a few things. But in the end,
Zelensky?
the point, I didn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it. But
In the Oval Office.
in the end, what it comes down to is this. The American people, in their eyes, it wasn't about him. They were voting against what the Democrats were throwing in their direction. I not only talked to Cuomo, I did interview Eric Adams. I did interview Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. I interviewed these people. I've talked to them, and I'm going to talk to some more of them too. And I'm going to say the same message. What are you doing to win? I love Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland.
I do
John
too. I
Cooper,
love him.
Pennsylvania, okay? I just interviewed Cuomo. I like him a lot. I want somebody to step up and recognize that man in the Oval Office, whether you like it or not, is potent. He's coming and he wins. You gotta find a way to beat him. This way is not the way that the
Well,
Democrats are doing it.
let's talk about how people are feeling about his performance, because a CNN poll this week found that 52% of people disapprove of Trump's performance in office so far. So even though he may have won the general election by less than 50%, 52% disapprove of what he's doing.
Okay.
We're also seeing Republican voters at town halls opposing.
Dude, I have no idea where she comes out with these numbers. Like, I'm just like, we see clearly that Trump's approval rating is high, and Sonny always comes out with these numbers from somewhere. And it's like, let me see where she said she got this from.
Let's talk about how people are feeling about his performance, because a CNN poll this week found that
Nope, not credible. Not a CNN poll. I don't even think so. Not the way that Scott Jennings and all of them go at it time and time again, almost every day, and they almost have no control of the panel. I wouldn't say that those numbers from CNN are even accurate. I wouldn't trust
52% of people disapprove of Trump's performance in office so far. So even though he may have won the general election by less than 50%, 52% disapprove of what he's doing.
Okay.
We're also seeing Republican voters at town halls opposing his executive overreach, giving Elon Musk the shadow presidency. Yet you said, quote, Trump is closer to normal than what we're seeing on the left.
Yeah, I was talking about why he
How
didn't
so?
elect. When I made that statement, I was talking about that was before the election.
I see.
Right.
Okay.
So when during the election, I said in the immediate aftermath of the election, I pointed out he was voted for because they considered him closer to normal than what the Democrats were spewing. That was what I said at that particular moment in time. Now, obviously, Elon Musk is an entirely different matter altogether.
Right.
This man is not an elected official. He hasn't been
and
there
yet-
for the Senate or anything, but he's
Nobody's saying nothing.
got an inordinate amount of power. I
Give
can
it to him by
understand-
Trump.
I can understand how that can scare the living daylights out of folks
And we talked about that already. That shouldn't scare the living daylights out of anybody, because there has been plenty of times in history, and I talked about this in a previous live, where I named off certain presidents that brought in officials under executive order that they wanted to carry certain responsibilities out, and these people did not have to go before Congress or the Senate, and they were allowed to be brought in based on the president putting them in a certain type of position and them handling a certain type of job. This has happened in the United States plenty of times historically. So we went over the fact that Elon hasn't been elected by anyone, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because President Trump is the one who put him in place, and he's allowed to do that.
approval ratings. Obviously, we pay attention to that. But here's the bigger question. Who on the Democratic side are the American people pointing to and saying that's the person?
Well,
They don't have anybody yet.
Well, we're
money.
6 weeks in with
National Voice.
Right.
We're 6 weeks in with Everybody said let him do what he's doing so we can see what's going on. So, and now people are saying, well, what are you going to do as a Democrat? Well, wait a minute now. Y'all didn't want to hear what we had to say as Democrats because that wasn't what people voted for. So now we have a clear definition, and the American people will decide how they like what he's doing because now it's affecting in a way that people were not anticipating. People who didn't think they would be affected, like the folks who work in the federal government, they never saw this coming. They never saw this coming. Sorry about that. People can make omelets. Everybody doesn't eat eggs. Not a fan, but I like chickens. But I'm not a fan of eggs for the mouth. Anyway, our thanks to Stephen A. Smith, Be sure to check out his interview with the former governor of New York City on the Stephen A. Smith Show, wherever you get your podcasts.
And you know another thing that I saw a lot of people saying in the comments, and I totally agree with. I don't think that they were prepared for his answer. I don't think that they thought Stephen A. Smith was going to answer the way that he did. I think they thought he was going to get up there, complain about Trump, say, oh yeah, I don't like all of this stuff. But if they've been following him, especially lately, and listening to him, you would know that Stephen A. Smith has sound like he's been leaning conservative for some time now. It's funny because when they were putting up a panel of nominees that they thought would be the presidential nominee for the 2028 election, Stephen A. Smith found himself on there, and he pretty much blasted the Democrats for it because he said to them, I'm not the best choice, but the reason why I'm up there is because you guys don't have anyone. You don't have anyone that the people feel like is a voice or that's going to make a difference or, has as much impact or influence, right? So I think it's very interesting the way that he came at it, and he laid out all the facts. I think that even Sunny Holston was taken back, and even a little bit of facts that she spewed out, like I said, they're not to be trusted, not coming from CNN. Now, had Candace Owens, had Ben Shapiro, Piers Morgan, Matt Moores, there's a couple of other people I'm thinking about, maybe Theo Vaughn, Charlie Kirk. If some of these people would have came out and said that Trump's approval rating, like people are so displeased with him, it's over half of Americans that don't like what he's doing, then I might believe it. But if it's coming from CNN, I'm not going to believe it. If it came from, that's almost like it coming from MSNBC, and I wouldn't believe almost anything coming from MSNBC, right? But I did, however, appreciate when they did unleash on the Democrats based on their behavior during Trump's joint speech to Congress, because it was heinous, to say the least. It was. And I'm glad that it was recognized. So here we go. Candace Owens, Stephen A. Smith and Candace Owens interview. Super excited about it. We get to talk about one of the things that made Candace Owens one of the most controversial individuals within the black community, which is, I know this, one of them, because I got to hear about it for probably over a year, was when we saw Candace Owens. She was in another country when this happened. I think when someone interviewed her, they said she was, I don't know if it was like France or Italy, but she was with Kanye West, and she had on a White Lives Matter t-shirt. She talks about that here with Stephen Smith and kind of breaks that down and says that, as Kanye being her friend and she wanted to support, she kind of jumped in on that with him. Not that it was necessarily her idea at all, but, a supporter, which I can get that. I've jumped on things with my friends that later on I was like, that was cringy. I wish I didn't do it, like whatever, but it's happened, right? So, and I can believe her because at this point I've been a supporter of Candace now for a couple of years. So I just thought it was interesting because that is one of the things that made her the most controversial in the black community. A lot of people will say, "Oh, Candace Owens is a traitor," and "Oh, she has a white husband this and privilege that," and I'm not trying to hear all of that because again, I've dealt with this throughout the years and how I felt about it in particular and how I digested some of the things I saw. When you listen to her story, I think it's very genuine. Like I said, I think she's very transparent. She talks about, what she grew up, we grew up listening to the same music, and it's like, yeah, at first maybe I didn't know that because I was kind of on the train with everyone else, the ignorant train, and then I actually started to do my research, and it's like, we grew up literally the same way. And she just talks about her shift in politics as she learned, like as she got knowledge. And honestly, I could appreciate it. The last thing I watched by her, I did watch something she did with Judge Joe Brown, which that was excellent. I mean, Judge Joe Brown, he was telling her things that, in the podcast, she was like, what? I've never heard this before. And I was blown away because I was like, I've never heard this before. So it was a great episode with Candace Owens and Judge Joe Brown. And the last episode she did with her husband, I think it was, maybe it was late last year if it wasn't really early this year, but I think it was late last year. And they talked about that being one of the toughest years in their marriage. And that's where they learned, how, that pretty much to have a bulletproof marriage. You know, when you go through some things, you start to realize how strong your bond, your relationship with that person is. And I thought that that was a great episode. And I watched others in the past. You know, those are just probably the two most recent that are coming to mind now, other than this. But again, she's somebody that I swear by. If you guys don't pay attention to political information, if you start watching Candace, I think you will, because I think that you'll find out a lot of things that you've learned in history and it turns out to not be true, or we don't have all the facts, or it was a complete hoax. And Candace has opened my eyes to so many things that there have been times where I was like, Candace, I don't think you're telling the truth here. And like she doesn't lie. Credibility means a lot to her. And she said that, you know, she wants to be credible. And I can appreciate that about someone, right? Because when you lose the trust and the credibility of the people who watch you, you don't have anything after that. So we're gonna dive into this. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I wanted to give that little spiel. We're gonna play this. I believe I have notes here because I'm gonna play it for a couple of minutes. Okay, so it's not too bad, guys. It's about 7 minutes. Let me see, why am I stopping at 46:51? Okay, it's about a 7.5 minute clip we're gonna go at. So let's jump right in.
Rallies like, yeah, I'll watch your cat, you know. It's always a joke.
Yeah, and I get it, and I guess for me, because I think about that, and I remember when you showed up, I believe it was in Paris, you were with Kanye West, and you were wearing the White Lives Matter shirt and what have you, and I said, damn, and I was upset, I was actually upset at you, and here's why, Candace, because I looked at it and I said, no, don't give the ammunition, you can sit up there, you can talk to folks about your views, what you know, and educate folks without them being closed-minded because they saw something and visualized something and automatically deemed that you were against us as a people.
Right.
So, I mean, as you reflect on a moment like that and you talk about the Black community and politics, how do you feel, how do you gauge what's the right thing to do and what's not the right thing to do?
You know, for me, the discussion and polite discussion, it doesn't work. I have found that. You can go back and watch me on stage with T.I. and Killer Mike, and it doesn't work with the Black community. And I have a theory on this, and I think partially it's because we have this instance of father absence, but there's a lot of attitudes. And if you try to come politely, you're just going to get disrespected.
So I'm just gonna go back a little bit because I want to talk a little bit to what she said there, because I actually think she makes a great point. So she talks about this instance of fatherlessness, and then she talks about there's a lot of attitude. So someone might say, well, what does that have to do with anything as far as, like, you know, the Black community politics, and she's saying that, you know, politeness doesn't really work in the Black community. I can agree with her there. If someone were to ask, what is the point of the father part being brought up? Well, that's the point of fathers being in the home, right? Because fathers teach respect, right? I'm not saying that mothers don't, but there's a difference between the mother and the father. And usually just the father's presence, because it's so different than the mother's presence, children will act different. They will behave different. They will even interact with each other and their mom and their father in a very different manner because he's there. So when there's this absence of fathers in the home, I believe that it does aid to the attitude, because you grow up with the lack of respect. Like, you grow up understanding how important respect is. Now, luckily for me, other than my mother and my grandmother, I had uncles and aunts in my family that I just had a very strict family. I mean, I grew up in the type of family where I was not even allowed to use slang. So when I started to use slang, I was actually older. I still lived with my mom, but I was a teenager and I was much older, because I would literally get disciplined if I said yeah, you know, like my sister's grandmother would say things to me like, you know, don't say yeah, say yes. So I could understand. I had that I had that discipline around me. I had that village of discipline around me where I came up, and respect was super important to me. Respecting my elders was important to me. It wasn't always about if the person even behaved properly. It was just the fact that this person was older than me, and they had more life experience than me, so they were due respect, and I understood that. Like, that didn't bother me. But when she talks about the attitudes that she interacts with in the black community, I have to say I wholeheartedly agree with her there, because with the lack of fathers that we will probably see, especially not just in the black home, but if we say mainly, yeah, I think that there could be a lack of respect there. So when you're interacting with people, you have men who don't necessarily approach women respectfully. They haven't grown up around that, or they don't feel the need to do that. And then you also have women who don't approach men respectfully. They don't feel the need to do that, or they don't see why they should do that. And the family in which I grew up in, I know why both genders deserve respect, right? So I've always done that. Now, if I talk about this from a scriptural standpoint, I've always done it just within my family because I was taught that. But from a scriptural standpoint, right, even the Bible teaches you how to treat the different genders, right? Meaning men and women, right? It says older women treat as mothers, younger women treat as sisters, and older men revere them as you would a father. So it tells you how to deal with people. So obviously for a younger man, I would treat him as I would a brother, which I have biological brothers. So I would treat younger men like I would treat my brother, and I would treat older men, I would esteem them as I would my father. So there is a way to do this, but again, when you're not growing up in homes where maybe the father is planting the seed of biblical teaching, and he's leading his family towards God, right? And maybe it is a single parent home where it's just a mom, and if she's not doing that, I think that it's so obvious that a lack of respect would be apparent, that it would be there. So I have to say, I agree with Candace here. I think something she said, I know some people will listen to this and they'll say, man, that's a hard pill to swallow, Q, and I've never liked Candace and I don't know about that. And I would challenge them to say, dude, listen and chew on it and kind of meditate on it. Because even where I might have wanted to push back a little, just sitting with it a little bit longer, I'm like, man, she's really right. She makes a great point about it.
Talk about the black community and politics. How do you feel? How do you gauge what's the right thing to do and what's not the right thing to do?
For me, the discussion and polite discussion, it doesn't work. I have found that. You can go back and watch me on stage with T.I. and Killer Mike, and it doesn't work with the black community. And I have a theory on this, and I think partially it's because we have this instance of father absence. But there's a lot of attitudes. And if you try to come politely, you're just going to get disrespected. And so in terms of the White Lives Matter shirt, first off, Kanye, that's how he communicates. He communicates with art. That's like, this was Kanye's thing that I was stepping into, but I understood what he was saying there because he is someone that does not no one puts Kanye in the corner. No one tells Kanye what he has to be. And so when you start saying, oh, I'm going to superimpose you just being a black victim onto someone like Kanye West, and he hated when white people would come up to him and say Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. So he's like, okay, you want to patronize me? Oh, let me patronize you. Your life matters too, right? Okay. Oh yeah, white lives matter too. Mm-hmm. And I want you to know that. White lives matter, your life matters. He never liked that, the patronization of it. And so I felt the same way. And we communicate differently. I usually am using more bombastic words, but that moment to me, especially as someone who grew up and really Kanye's music kind of gave me the courage to be myself, to have to be an archetype of what a black woman should be. And it was a moment for me that I reflect on very fondly. And yeah, it broke the internet and it started a lot of conversations. But imagine if black people were just like, yeah, every time I saw a white person, right, I'm with white life matters. It's just, there's something about it I just don't like. It wasn't for me.
And it makes sense when she says that, right? Like, if we think about Kanye's personality, he would do something like that, right? Like, he feels like, white people saying to him, Black Lives Matter, it's kind of like a tease, it's tedious. And then so, and his response is like, well, thank you, your life matters too, like white lives matter. So if you think about the context of Kanye, especially over what we've seen the last couple of years, like, yeah, I know a lot of people say he's dealing with mental health issues, and to some degree, I agree with that, but putting some of that aside, it's like just his personality. It's like, yeah, he kind of pushed back a lot, right? He goes against the grain a lot. So it makes sense that Kanye West would have that mindset when it comes to the White Lives Matter t-shirts.
You brought up the use of bombastic words. You used that with George Floyd as well, who was murdered by a police officer in Minnesota. And obviously a lot of people in the black community had a real problem with you as it pertained to that. That brings me to this question. When you take these positions, does it enter your mind? I don't want to use the word vitriol because I think that's a bit too strong and that's unfair to you and I don't want to do that. But when you consider the fact that so many people in the black community have voted Democrat since the civil rights legislation in 1964. Remember what Lyndon B. Johnson said, that, you know, you pass this legislation and we'll have the Negroes vote for us for the next 200 years. Remember that statement?
Okay, so that statement that Stephen A. Smith just said, and I'm going to go back a little so you can hear it again. It was by President LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, right? And I have told and talked to so many black people about that statement, right? It was a statement made by LBJ, our president, because during the elections, he felt that he was losing some of the black vote to the Republicans. He felt like, you know, the black people weren't really voting the way, I guess you could say, he or the Democratic Party wanted them to vote. And he made this statement where, you know, these Negroes are getting real uppity. So he says, we have to promise them something. We have to say that, you know, basically promise them the world, say we're going to do all of these things and do just enough, but really not do anything. And he says, if we do that, we'll have those Negroes voting Democrat for 200 years. Okay, I can tell you this right now. And when Candace Owens said that, you know, Lyndon B. Johnson hated us and he was a devout racist, I can tell you right now, the minute that I did my own research and I saw for myself that Lyndon B. Johnson made that quote, I already said, yep, I knew that there was something wrong with that party. Like, I've always felt like that. Now, if you go back to the 1960s, it's hard, right? Because you have the older black generation, which I've talked about, like older pastors who I interact with and people who I just interact with in ministry, and we'll talk about like civil rights movement, what things were like before, you know, when MLK was around, Reverend Al Sharpton back in the day with them, how things were, right? And you have a lot of the older black generation very devout to the Democratic Party because of the civil rights movement, which I could understand that. When someone does something like that for you of that magnitude, I can understand why you would feel a sense of loyalty towards, I guess you could say, that entity or that thing. With that being said, times, things, people, and seasons change. And the Democratic Party does not, at least to me, seem to be the Democratic Party it was at that time. And even at that time, we still had presidents like LBJ around that literally could not stand black people or did not want to see the success of black and brown people in the country, right? So when she makes that statement, it's an important statement. Well, when Stephen A. Smith makes that statement after Candace Owens talks, it's important that people hear that statement, they listen to that, because Lyndon B. Johnson was a devout Democrat, a part of the Democratic Party, and he was also someone who was a devout racist. Now, you do have people that will push back. If you know the history of Lyndon B. Johnson, he had things like a black butler, he had black or African Americans that would work in his home and around him, and he was a certain way with them, sometimes in public and around people. But when these people would have private interviews with other people and they would talk about how Lyndon B. Johnson would treat them, they would all say how horrible he was towards them and how nasty of a man that he was. So we shouldn't be fooled like just by a party. Just because you are African American or Hispanic in the United States, it does not mean that you automatically vote Democrat. That is not how that works. You do not go to the polls ignorant. You do your research and you figure out what the candidate stands for, and you figure out if that's someone who aligns with you or if you want to align with.
Question. When you take these positions, does it enter your mind? I don't want to use the word vitriol because I think that's a bit too strong and that's unfair to you and I don't want to do that. But when you consider the fact that so many people in the black community have voted Democratic since the civil rights legislation in 1964. Remember what Lyndon B. Johnson said, that, you pass this legislation and we'll have the Negroes vote for us for the next 200 years. Remember that statement? I know, I remember that statement. I'm wondering, because of your knowledge of politics, your obvious knowledge of the issues, when you speak on these things and you take positions about, you take such positions, particularly if it's antithetical or the antithesis of what the black community will point to, do you think about it and do so on purpose because, dare I say, you're disgusted with us as a community for being hoodwinked by the Democratic Party in your eyes? Is that possible?
So that's a very good question, and disgusted would not be the right term for it. Frustrated, yes, and constantly trying to give people the facts so that they understand that Lyndon Baines Johnson was an avowed racist and he hated us, and yet we are doing everything that he wanted us to do. We are reacting emotionally and not rationally. We seem to be a stereotype of irrationality, actually. All we have to do is make them feel something and they won't react. And I want to be clear, it's not just Black Americans. The Me Too movement was another manifestation of that. That's why I'm doing this Harvey Weinstein series. But what really does upset me about the Black community is that the manner in which we defend criminals, you will not find this in any other community, okay? So white person gets shot, killed, unarmed, they're not coming out, white people are not coming out and burning down their own neighborhoods, right? They're gonna be
Did you see the black community attack me for going off about OJ being celebrated? Did you see that?
Yeah, they've conditioned us to actually defend the worst in our communities. They just will let it go. You think Chinese people are gonna run outside if they're like, well, listen, this guy was high on fentanyl, he got into a brush up with police officers and he died. Chinese people will be like, especially Asian moms are just dead serious. They'd be like, you idiot, good for you. So you're an embarrassment, never come home. This is how Asian women are. They have a standard. You think Jewish people are coming outside and gonna, rally around and no. They all know that they think of it as like a natural process. We don't want to associate with that. And we have the exact opposite mindset. And when I say the exact opposite, I mean also the reverse of that being that the most educated and the most accomplished people in our community, in terms of their intellect, we reject. How can we ever get ahead, right? Condoleezza Rice, no, she's a traitor. She's an Uncle Tom. Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, he's a traitor. He's an Uncle Tom. But Dr. Ben Carson, a literal brain surgeon, Black people will call him stupid. It's crazy. So there's no way Black America can get ahead with that backwards mindset where you put George Floyd on a t-shirt and you denigrate and disrespect someone like Clarence Thomas. I'm just not with it,
You got a new platform called Club Candace, and I'm wondering how important is I know you're going to speak your truth.
I think that she makes a great point there, and that I said, she's gonna say some things that are hard pill to swallow, but we have to be able to listen. Like I said, this is a space where it's safe, and it's not a safe space because it's a space. It's a safe space because I've done a lot of work to be a safe person. So I can take in a lot of different perspectives and opinions, and I don't have to walk away feeling like someone doesn't like me or disagree with me or even they hate me. It doesn't have to be that. When Candace Owens says that, in the Black community, there's a way that we defend violence that you don't see in other communities, she's absolutely right. Again, I would say if she says something that's hard for you, I would challenge you and tell you to sit with it just a little bit longer. And this is where she turned out to be right. And it's true. Those other races that she listed, if you just tell the story in the headlines, hey, there was a white man, there was a Jewish man, there was a Greek man, just another race in general. This person is high on fentanyl or some type of drug. They have an interaction with the police. They seem to be coming off as they are not even just the most coherent, but they seem to be belligerent. And then the person gets into a mix-up and they end up dying, right? Those other communities are not going to go burn down their own neighborhoods. They're not going to go try to beat up public safety officers or civil servants or police because they're mad that person did that. If anything, they would look at it like Candace Owens said, like due process. like something you would call karma. Have you heard of it? Something that, when you do dumb stuff happens. So yeah, the other communities would look at it like that, whereas the black community would defend that and probably jump straight to racism or some type of, like being a target of some sort. And she's just saying, the fact that we will put George Floyd on a t-shirt, which she's not saying is inherently a bad thing, but yes, when you put somebody like George Floyd on a t-shirt and some of the things that he went through and did, and then you'll call somebody like Ben Carson an idiot. I can understand where she's coming from with that, and the fact that, black or brown people would even have that mentality is troublesome for me, because as I sat with it and I thought with it again, I'm like, she makes a good point. She's right about that,
I'm proving that time and time and time again, okay? But in the process of doing so, as you have this new platform, how important is it for you, if at all, to reach and resonate with the black community, or to really, really provoke change all across the board, particularly in the United States of America? Where do you lie with that?
Yeah. The number one thing is for me to reach people who want to hear the truth. And so that comes in all different shapes and sizes and colors. And our demographics have really changed. It's very mixed. People all around the world. Like I have, shockingly, I would say in Africa, they absolutely love me. I mean, like the amount of Nigerians who listen to my podcast daily, Uganda. So it's not a color thing. It's important for me to get information out that I don't think would otherwise be available. So with Club Candace, I have my vaccine series. I am quote unquote anti-vax, don't vaccinate my children. And I want people to know why. I want people, especially if you want to talk about something Black Americans should learn about, it's the vaccine industry. We were targeted, and what was sent over to Africa to experiment and make people infertile. It was Hispanic women, Native Americans, and Black Americans were experimented on. And this is the stuff that matters. And so also obviously the book club, to introduce them to the books that I read outside of the school system that kind of helped forge a lot of my opinions, a lot of my political opinions. And so that's really fun that we meet every 2 weeks. And so if you're just getting kind of whatever goes on in this headquarters of crazy, it's all happening at Club Candace.
Make them a sandwich.
I thought that was great. So you guys, if you want to go check out Club Candace, go do that. But I think she just makes a lot of really good points. When she just talks about her political views and some of the books that she read outside of school that really helped drive her political views, and it changed her. She talks about believing, in the Democrats, leaning on the Democratic side, being a Democrat, possibly. I don't want to misquote her, but just kind of leaning on that side, just like I did, just like most African American people in this country do, and doing it at the expense of knowledge, because we're not doing it because we actually believe in what the Democratic Party believes in. It'll just be, because we see our aunts doing it and our uncles and our moms are telling us that we should do it. But even when we sit down and talk to them, they don't even have really much of a reason why they are doing it, other than 1964, what the Democrats were like in the 60s, or that everyone loved Kennedy, or just something, so it's like, I really love the fact that Candace Owens, just her platform exists in general. I think she's a great watch. I think that, she's a great source for knowledge, and you guys need to take advantage of that. So not switching gears too much, but a little bit, we're going to go over to Matt Moore's TV. Shout out to you, Matt. I love Matt's channel. He has 413,000 subscribers. Go check it out if you get a chance. I love the way he covers news, especially political and conservative news the most. But top Democrats have secret meeting as party implodes. So after Donald Trump's joint speech to Congress, I would not be surprised if the Democratic Party imploded, because their behavior was horrible, to say the least. And that really is a watered down word that I'm using. It was despicable, it was childish, it was immature, and it was also very telling. And the nation saw it. So I don't know if the Democrats meant to do this based on what Mr. Hakeem Jeffries put out there before they met with President Trump. It seems like he wanted them to be cordial, but I don't think they chose to not listen to him, or he didn't know about the bingo paddles. That's the only thing I can think of. If you're wondering what I mean by bingo paddles, go back on YouTube and search President Trump's joint speech to Congress, and you will see the Democratic side holding up bingo paddles that have things like Elon lies and Musk steals and pay your taxes and just ridiculousness. Yeah, so that's what they chose to do. I'm not really sure. Even a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer was upset at the behavior of the Democrats. He actually said this, and I'm gonna see if I can find that. Maybe we'll go over that tomorrow. If I have it in my history before we dip out, I can show it to you guys. But even he said, I probably won't show it, but I'll say in summary, he said that even he was frustrated with the Democratic Party because of how much noise they were making. He was barely able to hear President Trump. So I thought that was super cute, and also really sad that the 13-year-old had to express his his level of displeasure towards the Democratic Party. So it was just hilarious to see. I'm like, man, you guys are really going even farther left than what you already are. So we are going to jump in to Matt talking about the Democratic Party being in disarray. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the news just broke that late last night, as the Democratic Party continues to implode, senior-ranking Democrats and top-level donors called for a secret private meeting behind closed doors.
Yeah.
That's right. The Democrats are officially in full-blown panic mode. So, folks, let's try to break down everything that we know is going on inside the Democratic Party behind the scenes. Right now, the Democrats are in the middle of a massive leadership crisis. Their party platform is wildly unpopular with Americans. People are sick and tired of the sort of petulant, disrespectful behavior that the Democrats openly displayed during Trump's recent congressional address. And because of all of that, the Democrats are bleeding support day by day. Here's the truth, folks. Top Democrat leaders as well as donors know that the party is collapsing in on itself at this very moment. And so right now, they're panicking. And so to prove just how bad things have gotten for the Democrats, I want you guys to take a look at this excellent breakdown of what actually went on inside of this secret Democratic meeting. And also, as a bonus, we get to hear what Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has to say about all of this. Take a look.
Here's what they said happened last night. I was very intrigued by it. This is after the censure of Al Green. You have Politico Playbook citing Axios that says there was a very unhappy House Democratic leadership meeting. They had a come to Jesus meeting with a dozen House lawmakers. Punchbowl, elucidating on that, said that this included Maxwell.
So I'll read this. This is from Politico Playbook. It says, in the wake of several Democrats disrupting Trump's congressional address, a very unhappy House Dem leader had a come to Jesus meeting with a dozen of those lawmakers yesterday. Axios Andrew Solinder and Hans Nichols report. You know, I hate that they called it. I'm like, why does it have to be a come to Jesus moment? Why was it a come to Jesus moment? This is why the Democrats annoy me.
Paul Frost, Jasmine Crockett, two very outspoken Democrats, and they used the word that they were berated for their behavior. How ordinary is it for leadership to berate members of their own party?
It says earlier on Thursday, Jeffries, meaning Hakeem Jeffries, and party leaders brought in some of the most vocal rank and file Democrats, including Reps Maxwell Frost, a Democrat from Florida,
And were you surprised by this?
I wasn't surprised. It is extraordinary, but they did make fools of themselves on the House floor. And everyone.
So they didn't finish that, but House Speaker Mike Johnson says he was surprised by it, but he wasn't, because they made fools of themselves on the House floor, and they did. The fact that they did it in front of everybody was where I was just like, maybe they don't know that this is actually being broadcasted and like everyone can see them. I don't know, but I was shocked by it.
They did make fools of themselves on the House floor, and everyone saw it, everyone in the country. It was a reminder to them why we won so decisively in this last election cycle and why they lost. And they're really a party in total disarray, as you see it on vivid display right now. They don't have an identified leader. They don't have any vision for where they're going. They don't have a platform that they can run on because it was repudiated overwhelmingly in the election. So they're sort of flailing about, and it blew up on the House floor, and I think they deeply regret it. At least some of them do. Others apparently didn't get the message of the election.
And folks, Speaker Mike Johnson is absolutely correct with everything that he just said. Right now, the Democratic Party is in the middle of a massive internal struggle, and the party leadership has absolutely no idea what to do about it. So, folks, what do you say we take a little bit of a deeper dive into what really went on behind closed doors inside of this secret Democrat meeting? And also, we're going to try to unpackage what it all means for just how bad things have gotten for the Democrats. So first and foremost, let's take a look at the internal divisions going on inside the Democratic Party that are on full display right now. Right now, the Democratic Party is pretty much split into two factions. On one side, you have the progressives, the radical leftists, who believe that the best way to take on Trump is through aggressive, over-the-top protests. And then on the other side, you have the moderates and also the leadership, who think the constant protests and disruptions are only...
So I know that this is Mr. Schiff and this is Hakeem Jeffries. As far as the women here, I know this is Miss Lee, Ilhan Omar. That's AOC. I forgot who this is. I don't think it's Sotomayor. It might be. I forgot.
And then on the other side, you have
these are some pretty far lefties as far as the Democrats go. And I only say that not because I necessarily 100% believe that, but this is kind of what they are described as. This is kind of what people label them as, especially AOC. This is why she lost to, I forgot his first name, Connolly. But I believe this man in Congress, he's a ranking member. I think he's 76 years old, somewhere around there. And that's who AOC lost to. And a lot of young people in the Democratic Party were frustrated by it. They were upset. You know, they were saying, again, another thing the Democrats are not doing well. They're not letting their younger generation kind of step up into leadership. They're kind of leaving all of the, let's say, OGs. They're kind of leaving all of them there. And they're not giving people like AOC and other younger Democrats a chance to kind of step into the limelight. So a lot of people were frustrated about that.
And also the leadership, who think the constant protests and disruptions are only making things worse. And now, folks, this isn't just some simple disagreement amongst the Democrats. No, this is a full-on civil war going on inside of the Democratic Party. As we now know, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries actually urged his fellow Democrats to keep things dignified and respectful during Trump's congressional address. That being said, did all of his fellow Democrats listen to him? No, of course not. Instead,
yes, this. So these are the bingo signs that I was saying some of the Democrats were holding up. Some of them had them and they're just not holding them up currently because the media actually got a shot of, and I forgot this representative's name. I believe she's from New York. It might be Brooklyn. And she is one of the oldest members. Actually, she's one of the first Latino women to actually be in Congress. So the media actually got a pretty good shot of her holding up her sign very angrily at President Trump. But yeah, they say things like, the bingo signs say things like save Medicaid and Musk steals and save Medicaid. And they said other different things, but everyone in this shot, they're not holding up their sign.
a lot of them decided to throw a full-blown temper tantrum on the House.
And this is Representative Al Green. So he, Congressman Green, he actually is being censured because of his behavior during President Trump's joint speech to Congress. He was actually the one who stood up with his cane and he pointed at President Trump and he said, "You have no mandate." That is what he said his words were. But he said it more than one time. He was very loud, very disruptive, to the point where Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had to use the gavel and try to get order in the House a couple of different times. And then eventually Al Green was escorted out. So he's actually now being censured because of that event that took place during President Trump's speech.
Floor for the entire country to see. And now the Democratic leadership and donors are furious. But now let's talk about why this division is such a big problem for the Democrats. At this very moment, many top Democrats are now realizing that their entire party looks like an absolute joke. And why? Because instead of offering real solutions to America's problems, all they're doing is engaging in embarrassing political stunts like we all just saw the other day.
Yep.
As a reminder, at Trump's congressional address, we all saw a group of Democrats showing up in coordinated pink outfits to protest Trump's so-called war on women, even though some of those very same Democrats literally just got done voting to let men compete in women's sports.
And the reason why some of them would have just got done voting to allow men to compete, biological men, which would be trans women, to compete in women's sports, would be because some of them are trans women, right? Like this person right here, who is actually a representative from Delaware. I believe this is Sarah McBride, and Sarah McBride is actually a trans woman. So, it makes sense why it would be, and I'm not saying they all are, they all are not by any means. But what I'm saying is that these are some of the women in the Democratic Party who lean a little bit far left. So when they say that Trump's war on women, they don't actually mean biological women. They're talking more in reference to his war on trans women. And because Sarah McBride is a trans woman, I believe Sarah McBride would be someone who probably did vote, for trans women to be able to compete in women's sports. So it makes total sense why this would have happened and why they all showed up in this way, dressed in some form or shade of pink.
There were also constant interruptions coming from the Democrats. They were booing and they were heckling, they were screaming and shouting, which, by the way, led to one of them, Democratic Representative Al Green from Texas, actually getting kicked out of the building.
He sure did. He actually got escorted out. And he did say that he would do it again if he needed to because it came from his heart.
And now, folks, here's the worst part about all of this for the Democrats. Even some of their own members are now admitting that this entire strategy was a massive failure. It blew up in their faces. In fact, one Democrat strategist was caught saying, "We were trying to make Trump look bad, but instead we just made fools out of ourselves."
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And now, folks, this brings us to the most important part of today's video. How exactly are top Democrats really handling all of this behind the scenes? Well, let's just say not very well. Take a look.
How was that speech last night? Did you love it?
Well, I watched it. I don't think that was the best look for our party last night.
Very disappointing. So you didn't.
And John Fetterman is someone who I have said time and time again we should keep our eye on because he's someone who I think is a good choice for the Democratic Party. If they're going to go with a presidential nominee that makes sense, I think he's a good choice. Now, I mentioned this on the live the other day. I am not happy with the fact that he just voted in favor of trans women playing in women's sports. Not because he voted that way, but because I know that during a presidential election, that might be something that would hurt him. And I say that because it was something that hurt the Democratic Party this past election. So I don't think that the Democrats need to put forward a candidate that is for that. But I don't think that there are many Democrats that are not for it, right? So in that sense, it's like we're going to get what we get, but nonetheless, like I like John Fetterman's stance on a couple of different things. Again, in my opinion right now, I feel like he's a better choice than Josh Shapiro. So we'll see what happens. Josh Shapiro was also someone who I saw on the panel for 2028 presidential nominee possibilities.
The best look for our party last night.
Very disappointing. So you didn't stand up for anything.
The president got before the American people to talk about how he could drive down grocery prices.
Senator, why weren't you standing yesterday for anything?
Very important hearing right now on anti-Semitism.
But you didn't stand for anything at the speech last night.
What are you talking about, where you got that information?
Well, there was nothing the president had to say.
Lincoln Riley's mom, you didn't stand for her.
Factual or truthful or anything like that.
We applauded.
You don't think it's worthy to stand up for her like everyone else?
We should applaud.
Congressman, why didn't you stand for the speech?
Have a good day. I need to go to a meeting.
80% of the American people, according to CBS, loved the speech.
Again, I don't think we're the United States.
Are the Democrats out of
The
touch?
United States of America. Forgive me for going here. Forgive me for being out of breath.
I don't know what speech they were watching.
They were watching the president's speech, Senator.
Really? It wasn't worth watching.
You hear that? It wasn't worth watching. Folks.
Now, what do you do when you hear Mr. Schiff say something like that? What do you do when you hear someone, a part of your government, say that the president's joint speech to Congress wasn't worth watching? That's the kind of stuff that on the Democratic side is just troublesome for me.
Right there, Adam Schiff. That is a guy that's upset at his own party, not at anything that President Trump had to say. Because once again, deep down, all of these Democrats know that their entire party is in disarray. They all just spent years telling us that Trump was dangerous, a threat to democracy, hated by Americans. But now, after his congressional address, the numbers tell a very different story. In fact, according to various post-speech polls, 76% of Americans approved of everything Trump had to say, and 66% of Americans believe that Trump's policies are moving this country in the right direction. In other words, President Trump is absolutely dominating. Meanwhile, the Democrats are running around like a bunch of confused chickens with their heads cut off.
Exactly.
So folks, here's the big question at the end of the day. What exactly are the Democrats going to do about all of this? They don't seem to have a clue. In fact, according to insiders, the Democratic leadership is scrambling behind the scenes trying to come up with a strategy to stop Trump. But folks, here's what's painfully obvious to every American with a semi-functioning brain. Right now, the Democrats have no message, they have no leader, and worst of all, they don't have a plan. And this is why, instead of actually fixing the country's problems, they're just throwing tantrums. So folks, here's the bottom line. Here's the takeaway. The reality is the Democratic Party is pretty much collapsing. Their leadership knows that they're losing support every single day. They're losing control of their own members, and they're losing the trust of the American people. Meanwhile, President Trump's approval ratings are through the roof. They're at an all-time high, and the American people are rallying behind him. So hey, unless the Democrats can figure out a way to turn things around and fast, that party is done for.
Yep.
But now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video,
I agree with Matt. That's his info, I believe, for his Facebook community. But I agree with him. Bill Maher actually talked about this when I reviewed something on the live. I believe it might have been Thursday or Wednesday. And Bill Maher said, you know, someone said to him, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a congressional speech, you know, be so bad and the Democratic Party react so bad. Have you ever seen it? And Bill said, yeah. You know, when the stock market crashed, you know, he said the American people were in bad shape, and you know, they were not happy with who was in office at the time, and because of that, he said that led to the Democrats winning 5 straight terms, right? So that, you know, that says a lot. It says a lot. 5 straight terms says a lot, and I said this time and time again. I've said that if the Democrats don't find a leader that is decent, that has common sense views, that isn't doing weird TikToks to get our attention, because some millennials are on TikTok, some millennials hate TikTok, a lot of Gen Z is on TikTok, right? But nonetheless, that's not the way that you get the attention of the American people. A lot of people are upset right now. So the fact that Trump came and on his campaign, when during his campaigning, he said, like, listen, I'm focusing on groceries, I'm focusing on making the economy better, I'm focusing on making America affordable again. That's what people are interested in, whether it doesn't matter whether they're rich or not. Everyone was interested in the same thing. And this is why I say the Democrats are so tone deaf, because they don't get it. Like, they think that making a TikTok and us choosing a Democratic fighter is how you're going to win the American people over. And it's not. It's not. And actually, the funny thing about it was, I'm going to react to it a little bit later, because I'm going to go live a little bit later tonight just to see kind of what that does, because I'm still trying to figure out what's the best time for me, and if I want to do more than one live. But I'm going to react to something that Scott Jennings said to a Democratic leader, and he was honest about the TikToks, and he said it was the dumbest thing that I've ever seen. He was blatant, you know, and he was very frank and straightforward. But if I'm honest, when I saw it too, I thought to myself, like, come on, Democrats, like, really? Like, this is what we're doing now? Like, now it's like Mortal Kombat on TikTok, and we have to pick our favorite or our you know, our strongest Democratic leader. I just thought it was weak. I thought it was weak. All right, guys, so here we are at the last section point of the live, one of my favorite parts, where we react and we end with a clip from Cliff Buell, our trusted friend. He is my brother in Christ. He's a Christian. I'm a Christian, and I end all of my lives with a clip from Cliff. Each night he talks about something different. I kind of just pick a topic that I think relates best to culture, or what we all might be dealing with, or we can all see eye to eye with, or it might resonate with us, and we kind of just look at it and we react to what he says. So tonight he's talking about his logic backfired. Here it says his own logic was his demise. So basically his logic worked until it didn't. I think we all live by that, right? Like we have a certain way that we live life. We don't all want to subscribe to maybe what our parents and our grandparents do. So maybe we don't all choose the path of Jesus. And we want to go out there and we want to explore. You know, we want to learn about other cultures and other religions and other gods. And I don't think that, you know, there's anything wrong with exploration. If anything, you know, you're going to find out that all of it's not true. So I think that that's a great thing, that there is truth out there, but all of it is not true. So I think that, you know, deconstructing your faith, if you are a Christian, and looking over why you believe what you believe is a healthy thing. I don't think that I know that Jesus is not intimidating by a human deconstructing their faith, so it doesn't bother me either. And I think that it's important that we share clips like this because we never know who's watching. We never know who's going to watch. We might share this with somebody and we don't know at what point that they're at. Like people put on great masks in good shows and they try to hold it together and they're really not all together, right? So let's jump into this clip and let's see what Cliff is talking about, what he's reacting to when it comes to us reacting to or us living by our own logic.
This dude beat himself with his own logic. We have to see this.
I believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes. Interesting.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh no, I don't think anything's acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside her body.
What about meth? But should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
Good question. I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States. Child services.
I guess ECFS would be, what's her body though?
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child. This dude beat himself with his own logic. You have to see.
I think that's hilarious because he felt like he was going somewhere for a minute and then he wasn't going anywhere. Essentially, they asked him, like, you believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal that they have rights? And he says yes. And then the gentleman right here says, so as long as the child's inside of the mother, then the child doesn't have rights? And he says, no, I just believe, or anything is acceptable. And he says, no, I just believe that a woman just still has the right to her own body. So then the other host says, well, what if she wants to do meth? And he's just kind of like, well, what do you mean? And then he goes, well, you know, it's her body. So what if she wants to do meth? And then he's talking about like these services in the United States. At first he goes out there and says that I think if she wants to do meth, it's okay. And then pertaining to a service. And then he says, well, no, it's not okay because then she's intentionally trying to kill a child. If I was there, I probably would have pushed back a little more and said, well, what if she's not trying to kill the child? What if she's just trying to have a good time? You know, and she wants to do meth. So yeah, that's what our own logic will do. It will make us look foolish. And scripture talks about that, right? Like fools don't look at wisdom as something that they have to get or something that's important, right? The Bible talks about this. A fool thinks that within his own right, he knows everything. He thinks that within his own right, I don't need to believe in a sky daddy or a God to get through life. I just need to believe in science and everything I can see. I don't argue with people that think like that or believe like that. I think that that's fine if they do. I think where it surprises people with me is that because I'm a Christian, they think that when they explain that to me, I'm going to go on this tangent or I'm going to try to convince them of something. And I tell them most of the time, friend, you clearly haven't read the Bible. Jesus didn't go around trying to convince people to believe in him. He didn't go around in a manner where he was like, please believe, or begging. Like, it wasn't like that. You know, there were people that just understood the moment he spoke. There were people that just understood the moment they saw him do a miracle. And he says it, you know, he comes back specifically for Thomas, and I love that. But he does says, you know, Thomas, you believe because you see, but blessed are those who believe who have not seen. I just fall into the category where I haven't gotten the luxury that Thomas has gotten But I do believe that Jesus is real. I do believe that Jesus is still alive today. And I do not believe that Jewish people who do not believe in Jesus are not going to heaven. I don't take that stance at all. I also don't have the stance that the church has replaced the Jews. Like, there's a lot of weird things that are out there that people subscribe to. And that's why it's important who mentors you, what church you go to, what version of the Bible you're reading. All of that stuff matters if you're under someone that can help you understand things more. So I think that taking all of those things into consideration, my understanding of God is I don't have to go out and try to persuade people to believe in God. If someone is living their life based on their own logic, I think that that's fine, right? I think that, they can live like that and they'll figure out if that works or if it doesn't work. But I don't feel compelled, or I don't feel, unless the Holy Spirit puts it on me, I don't feel compelled, or I don't feel like the need to be like, oh, you need to believe in God so your life will be better. You should believe in Jesus. It's like, no, if you want to live by logic, live by logic. If it works for you right now, it probably is working for you right now because it's logic. So it's not like logic is stupid, right? God created it. It's not like logic is dumb. It's not like science is not real. I always say science is like God's fingerprint. So none of that stuff intimidates me. So I think that, he gets this guy caught up in his own logic, and now he has to go back and ask himself, does that baby have rights inside or outside of its mother's body? He has to ask himself that question, and he has to answer it from a real place, not the place of logic that he was coming from that just made him look ridiculous, right? But from a real place. Like, if you say this child has rights inside or outside, then the child has rights in point blank period. For a season, the mother's body is actually not her own, right? It's not. And we have to be courageous and willing and brave enough to say unpopular things, whether people like it or not, right? It's fine. People have said unpopular things all throughout history, and we all have gotten over it, right? So guys, here we are at the end of the live. I had fun with you guys. I always do. I love when you guys stop by, chill on the corner with me. We talk about news. We got to watch some great clips today. Again, guys, go back, look at some things by Candace Owens. Stephen A. Smith, great for the culture. Another guy who I think has a good take on politics, especially right now, kind of leaning conservative. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. So until next time, guys, remember, I will not be on tomorrow because it is Sunday. We go live here every single day on this channel. Monday through Saturday. Sunday is our off day. But other than Sunday, we are here every single day between 4 p.m. and 5:30, reacting to real news in America, around the world, leaders that are doing horrible and great things, our leader, what he's doing, and we just chill out on the corner and we talk. We get educated, we get knowledge, we don't go to the polls ignorant, right? So I appreciate you guys stopping by and chilling. It is always fun. Until next time, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. What I always say, take care of yourselves, love one another. Peace.